It's time to pull those belts tight, race fans. The front stretch is coming at you, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Now, here's Dan Taylor and Dirk Houston.
Well, good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to the front stretch presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. Fast-paced white-knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs. Get over to Joe's Karting today, and if you are a driver and you want to get parts for your car, the Joe's Karting parts store just about ready to reach a one-year anniversary. They'll get you hooked up with parts at an affordable price, and they can even be delivered to the racetrack, to your shop, or you can swing down to Joe's Karting, turn a couple of laps in the carts while your part is being pulled, and have yourself a great time. joeskarting.com for more information.
And then go across the street and have a bite to eat.
We got a busy show lined up for you today. Thankfully, there's some news coming out of NASCAR that we're able to talk about. So we are going to talk about the new points penalty procedure, as well as some of the new things that NASCAR announced to kick off the Daytona Speed Weeks. Quite a few things coming down to the All 3 National Series, the qualifying procedures, how all that stuff's going to work. And then also in turn number 2, I figured it's as good a day as any to review all the driver changes. Because every time you go into February and you go into Daytona, you're like, wait, who's driving this car again? Because for us that we live it so much, it still can get confusing who's driving what car each weekend. And by us, I mean obviously Dirk Houston, the co-host, and then we've got our good friend Chad Robb of fantasyracingtips.com. He's going to join us all show long, as well as give us some of his tips and tricks in turn number 3. Chad, great to have you, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So like I just talked about, Chad's coming up in turn number 3. And then in turn number 4, we will cover any of the leftover news and notes that we have for today's show.
If we have any time left.
If we have any time left. Last couple of weeks, we haven't left much time for turn 4, so it's been like, hey, here's turn 4, okay, bye.
Yeah. It has not been a symmetrical racetrack, that's for sure.
They barely lasted longer than a lap at Daytona. Well, let's get to the big announcement. NASCAR announced earlier in the week that they were going to be revising their National Series disqualification procedure.
They finally figured out dirt racing had it right all along.
Well, here's the thing with me. I never understood the big uproar last year when drivers were found illegal during post-race. Why people got so mad when the only thing the driver really got was another notch in the record book. It never made much sense to me because everything about that win was taken away except for another knock in the record book.
Well, again, as we've talked before, they don't take all the money, but they do now. Mm-hmm. They don't take all the points, but they do now. And as you just got confirmed today, that basically the penalties we used to hear about, like on Thursday, the 40 driver and owner points and the $75,000 fine, that's all gone.
Yeah.
I think there'll be something there, and I mean, I know NASCAR well enough that they're going to have something in an escalation. Mm-hmm. You get disqualified the second race of the season. If it comes back again, it's going to be like a double whammy, But as of right now, you lose the win, and you get 1 point. You get last place points, last place money, and that is the penalty.
So here's
nothing on top of it.
Here's the official statement from NASCAR. The inspection process that typically took place at the NASCAR Research and Development Center later on in the week will now be at the racetrack immediately following each National Series race. If a vehicle fails post-race inspection, it will be disqualified, resulting in a last-place finish and the loss of all benefits from the win or finish, as well as any stage points. All other vehicles would then move up in the finishing order under this scenario. And they did go on to say later on that the cars that would be tested automatically, winner in second place automatically gets inspected. That's nothing new. And then a random third car. They can take more if they choose to. They may, but that's going to be the basic to it. Inevitably the goal for this whole thing is that we were way too wrapped up the last 2 to 3 years of what's going to happen on Wednesday. What are the points penalties that are going to come out on Wednesday? Who failed today? For so many times, we didn't talk about the great racing action that we saw in 2017 and 18. And instead, we talked about post-race penalties and infractions and suspensions and results of and the scenarios and the crew chiefs and the car chiefs and too many penalties.
One of the things that NASCAR was emphasizing with this is that the initial inspection process when the cars show up at the track is going to be a lot more strict than what it was in the past. And then they're going to keep the OSS booth open the whole weekend, so you can bring your car in anytime you want. You can go in as many times as you want. So they're giving the teams as much opportunity as they need to get their car right.
Yeah.
So they're hoping that, it'll eliminate problems at the end of the race.
Yeah, and that's the teams not passing pre-qualifying inspection, not getting out onto the starting grid for qualifying was an annoyance for fans also, and they had to eventually ramp up their fines there to where you lost practice time the next week, and then you lost this, and then you got fined, and you lost your car chief, and you lost your Yeah, it's having that OSS will help these teams. I wonder if NASCAR is just saying, okay, we're going to give you the rope you need to hang yourselves, because no longer can you say that, oh, well, we can't get 40 cars or 36 cars through all the inspection in the 2-hour window you gave us. Now we're going to give you the whole race weekend. You're going to have all the opportunity in the world to pass that inspection, and when you can't, what's your excuse going to be this time?
Like at Daytona, they got 5 practices, and I heard some drivers already say, we might just totally ignore one practice and just keep rolling our car through the inspection line to make sure that it's all right for that final practice, and we're good to go.
It's going to be a different year with this penalty changing things, and it's something, to me, it was long overdue. And I mean, everybody thinks, if you read what they said, it's if they come off and they've got one loose lug nut, they still just get their quick little fine, and they're not going to lose a race for a loose lug nut.
Right.
Now, 3 lug nuts or more, loose or not there, period, they are going to lose the win, but 1 or 2 they won't. They'll just get their fine, and the crew chief will be put on probation for a couple races or something like that. And
that may seem like an extreme penalty maybe to some people. Oh, well, I've only got 3 loose lug nuts. That's 3 tires with 1 loose lug nut. That seems extreme, but this is a safety thing, and NASCAR has at times been forced to take safety very, very, very strict, and other times they've taken it very seriously on their own, and I think this is one of them where they saw the issues that were arising a few years ago when they were saying, we're not going to worry about lug nuts. You guys get them on and off as you feel need. And when we had issues and the teams went to them and said, please rein us back in because we can't do it ourselves.
Well, and that's just it. Normally, when NASCAR addresses a safety issue, it's usually too late. They didn't mandatory Hans device until after they lost Dale Earnhardt and Kenny Irwin and Adam Petty. So the fact that they're being proactive on this stuff, to me, you got to applaud them. And just as I said when I saw all this stuff come out on Facebook the other day, kudos to NASCAR for finally taking a stance on this.
Here's my worry with this. I don't think this has any more teeth, much more teeth than the penalty last year. I think for the guys that we had big infractions for in 2018 and 2017, it's going to be business as usual. They're going to continue to push the limit because it's not going to hurt them like it would if I was a Starcom Racing and Landon Castle. A big penalty like a post-race failure would cripple that team, as a penalty should for failing post-race inspection. But a car like a Kevin Harvick or a Kyle Busch or a Jimmy Johnson or a Chase Elliott or a Kyle Larson, those teams, I think they have decided that the penalty is worth the risk. Well, at least they did in 2018.
I think, the monetary damage will be bigger this year, at most races. Some of the races don't pay a ton of money, but you get disqualified at Daytona, That's a $75,000 fine. You get qualified at Daytona and lose $1 million. That's whatever it happens to be.
To clarify what you're talking about there, I think the last time we were able to see the points payout at Daytona, it was like $250,000 to finish last.
Yeah, to start.
Right, and this new penalty says you finish last, which means you then get that last points place finish, as opposed to winning Daytona, getting that $1 million check, and then being fined $75,000.
That's correct.
So a $925,000 payout is still totally worth having an illegal car. And so there is a couple of different differences to it. But in my opinion, I don't think this has enough teeth to stop these guys from pushing the limit and really finding these areas that are illegal.
Well, let's say, what did we have last year? 4 of these situations where a driver would have lost his win. So now we've got a baseline. So now we'll just go from here. I mean, if it cuts down to 2, obviously it had some teeth. If it cuts it down to 0, then it worked.
We had 2 times last year that a driver did lose the benefits of a win. Kevin Harvick was the only one that was the race winner and failed post-race inspection. And he did it twice.
I think the teams are just going to keep pushing the limit until somebody gets caught.
Yeah.
And then they're going to see what happened. How hard is NASCAR actually going to come down on us? Are they going to, make it so bad that nobody will ever do this again? Or will be business as usual?
I'm really worried with the state the sport is in and the struggles the teams are having, that NASCAR is really in a predicament that if they go far enough to really penalize these teams, you could go too far and shut a team down, and then that would cripple the sport. I mean, just imagine the ramifications if they found something with Hendrick Motorsports and they slapped them hard, and all of a sudden Hendrick Motorsports had to close down. You've lost 4 points-paying teams. You've lost 4 contracts, sponsorship dollars, tires for Goodyear, and the jobs. I mean, for crying out loud, the jobs you would lose.
The penalty from Michael Waltrip Racing, that pretty much shut down that team.
And that might be one of the reasons why NASCAR's a little timid, is taking these smaller steps to increase this penalty to the point where they would go, okay, have we gotten there now? You guys are finally going to get the point that we're going to get you if you continue to push the limit.
The good news is you don't have to go through the front stretch fancy league and change all the points on Wednesday.
I know. That was the other thing I was thinking about, was now I can release the official results on Monday. And contest winners for the 5-week contests get to know just that much sooner that they get to go. All right, that's going to do it for us in turn number 1. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in turn number 2. Talk about some of the big seat changes that are going to be effective, that are already effective at Daytona with practice yesterday, and then all this week as speed weeks are ramping up. We're going to take a break. We'll be back on the front stretch.
Every race car driver has run into the same problem. It's well past normal parts store closing hours, but you need that one to finish your car. The guys who brought you White Knuckle Racing by the River bring you Joe's Karting Racing Parts and Tire Store. Open until 10 p.m. Monday to Thursday and open until 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. A parts store that fits your after-hours schedule, and you can turn a few laps at Joe's Karting while you're waiting for your part to get pulled from their warehouse. joeskarting.com for more information.
Racers all over the country are discovering the benefits of powder coating their chassis. Powder coating offers a clean, even finish you will be proud to show off to fans and sponsors. Plus, it's a more durable surface. While looking beautiful, powder coating offers superior protection against corrosive chemicals typically spilled during routine maintenance. Bare frames start at $275 with estimates available if blasting or reworking is needed. Get your quote today by emailing Jordan F. at redoakfabrication.com or by calling 712-623-4911.
We're hooked up in turn 2 and still showing the green flag on the front stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch, rolling into turn number 2, and it's time to get you updated on some of the silly season news. By the way, let's talk about this real quick because we're going to try to make a quick turn 2. Sad news for a lot of NASCAR fans who thoroughly enjoyed jski.com, me probably being one of the biggest ones. I went there 3 or 4 times a day during the race season to get updated on news and a really, really nice perspective on information. He was very frank and clean to understand, and apparently reading after the fact, ESPN pulled him into an office last Monday and said, hey, you're done.
Yeah, it is a sad day. I did a lot of work with J-Ski. When I worked at Fox, they used to send out my articles on their website and everything. And
that was kind of cool when I'd see it. I was like, oh, look at that Chad Robb article.
Yeah. I mean, you get your article on J-Ski, you really got some followers.
He was the pinnacle of it. And honestly, they were talking about his page views were at about 72 million a year, down from 90 million a year from 12 years ago. And that's not that big of a decrease when you talk about all the other sources that are available out there.
The thing is, I talked to the guys from NASCAR that run their media, their website and everything, and I told them, this is your chance to, step up, and this is your chance to take the ball. And they act like it's no big deal. Like J-Ski wasn't, a big part of NASCAR.
Well, that's probably because J-Ski wasn't catering to NASCAR. He would write articles and he would publish stories that were damning to the sport. And from everything you could tell, Dirk, you've experienced too, NASCAR is the good old boy network.
Oh,
it's
huge.
You pat me on the back and you let this go, and I'll take care of you later. And I'm sure J-Ski caused a lot of issues at the front office for NASCAR.
He ruffled some feathers, no doubt.
The word I got is that J-Skis was professional article stealer. They'd steal people's article and then put it out on their own website, which I disagree with that because they gave everybody credit, that posted an article on there.
It was a great site. And the last thing I read about it said that he is interested in continuing. He doesn't have the funds to do it on his own. That's the reason why he was owned by ESPN for so long. And they continue to own the domain. They're just not updating it anymore. But he's interested in continuing if he can find the right person and the right funding.
Well, if it was actually owned by ESPN, I'm surprised that they kept him alive this long, to be honest with you, because ESPN and NASCAR had a huge falling out several years ago.
So we'll start with Kurt Busch and the number one at Chip Ganassi. This was one of the last pieces to fall into place. I think the second to last piece to fall into place in the 2018 silly season. And Kurt Busch had a long time that it was several seasons seemed like with Stewart-Haas Racing where is he going to be with them? Is he not? He would win a couple of races and then at the last minute it seems like they would re-sign him. Well, they weren't able to do it this time and he ended up moving over to the number one at Chip Ganassi and he replaces Jamie McMurray.
But only a one-year deal.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of odd. I say if Kurt doesn't have a fairly stout year, maybe 2 wins, at least making the playoffs, but 2 wins is kind of my number, I'm thinking. Yeah. I see Kurt just going ahead and fading off into the glory and being done.
Yeah.
I think he'll be back. I think Kurt's going to have a good year. I did a lot of research on him, and he's bounced around to a lot of teams.
Oh, yeah.
And every team he has joined is significantly a lot better than what they were before he got there.
Yeah. You think about what he did at Phoenix Racing with James Finch, and then what he did at the 78 with Furniture Row Racing after that team fell apart and he was able to elevate them to a new level, and then he went to Stewart-Haas Racing. Martin Truex Jr. filled the seat and took their car to a new level again, and then from Stewart-Haas Racing now he's with Chip Ganassi Racing. I think he's got a great shot at the Daytona 500. Ganassi's got some great engines and they have some good experience at that track, and Kurt's one of them too. He's got a lot of experience racing at the Daytona 500.
Well, yeah, I mean Jamie Mack, got a win at Daytona with the one car. I think, again, like I said before, I think if he doesn't put a couple wins up on the board, and definitely Ganassi's got the equipment to do that, but they had such an off year last year.
Yeah, them like every other Chevy.
Kyle Larson, won 2 races the previous year, and everybody thought it was going to be a breakout year for Kyle, and he never found the winner's circle. Mm-hmm. If that carries over to this year, like I said, if Kurt doesn't win a couple races, I see him fading off into the sunset. You talked about the way he's brought all these other teams off. The Finch team, Furniture Row, were pretty much nobodies.
Yeah.
He hasn't really set the world on fire at Stewart-Haas.
Mm-hmm. Even though he made it to the round of 8 last season, it was a very not exciting round of 8 for him and journey to it. He really didn't blow up the track at all. He didn't wasn't pushing for the win. He wasn't predominantly up front. He just he survived his way in and he made it to the round of 8.
And we can't forget that he is a past champion.
Yeah.
So he knows how to win. He's won a lot of races. But I think he needs to do that, or I think he needs to just go ahead and, I think if he doesn't start winning, I think he's going to have some sponsor trouble too, because Monster loves him.
Yeah, that'll be I think that is more the deciding factor than anything, is if Monster decides to return into 2020 and sponsor him again. I think now we're into the phase now where Kurt Busch has got to ride as long as he has a sponsor. And it'll probably be at Chip Ganassi Racing for the next couple of years. But you're right, Dirk, if he can't pick up a couple of wins, then Monster's going to go find a driver that is picking up wins and can get them to victory lane a little bit more, and then that's going to do it.
Or one that costs a lot less money to put on the racetrack.
Next car we're going to talk about, Ryan Newman making the move over to Roush Fenway Racing in the number 6 car. He's taking over for Matt Kenseth and Trevor Bayne, who kind of shared that ride in 2018, which was kind of a weird deal in its own.
Well, I mean, we know Trevor's had health issues, but they never really came out and said that's what it was. But I think everybody that sees what happened thinks that's what it was.
Yeah. Leaving the 31 car, that being Ryan Newman at Richard Childress Racing, taking over is going to be Daniel Hemrick, and they're going to be switching that number from the 31 to the number 8 and bringing that iconic number back. Caterpillar is going to be a primary sponsor for 8 races, Liberty National Life Insurance, Bass Pro Shops, Cabela's, and VF Workwear, as well as Cessna for Richard Childress Racing. So Daniel Hemrick making his Rookie of the Year debut in the number 8 car.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a good rookie class, but kind of an unproven driver. You know, he doesn't have a championship anywhere. You know,
neither did Jimmy Johnson either when he came in the series. And when you watch Daniel Hemrick race on the 1.5 mile tracks, he reminds me so much of Jimmy. He's just that smooth driver that doesn't overdrive the car. And, he gets better results than, what he should.
Well, if RCR hires Chad Knaus, maybe he'll have some of those results.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what Daniel can do. And I absolutely agree with you guys that what you do in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series really doesn't give you a good barometer of how you're going to perform in the Cup Series. We've had guys that have been incredibly successful in the Xfinity Series, can't do anything in the Cup Series. And on the flip side, guys that can't do anything in the Xfinity Series or the Truck Series, they have big success in the Cup Series. Let's see, moving on. We know that Martin Truex Jr. is going to be moving to the 19 at Joe Gibbs Racing. Daniel Suarez moving on. We'll talk about him and where he's landing next. But Martin Truex Jr. leaving Furniture Row Racing after it was announced that team was going to be closing its doors at the final race of 2018.
Martin went from JGR West to JGR East. That's what he did. Let's be honest.
I hate it when you do that.
Well,
I hate it when you. And that's a strong word, but. Despite the fact that Joe Gibbs Racing built those cars and shared information, it was Cole Pearn was the big deal, and Martin Truex Jr.
Cole Pearn's going to JGR East too.
Right. But when you do that, you cut down what they did at Furniture Row Racing. I mean, they paid the freight. They won a championship against Joe Gibbs Racing cars, not like any other team that hasn't.
Well, it's the same thing. Stuart Haas won one against Hendricks with with our equipment too. If you beat your boss, things are going to change. That's all there is to it.
My big deal with Truex this year is how is Truex and Kyle Busch going to coexist in the same company? I mean, that close.
Well, it's probably the same question they've asked several times with how is Kyle Busch and any other driver that is under the Joe Gibbs Racing banner going to coexist?
Yeah, but he never had anybody that was this competitive with him.
Yeah.
Tony Stewart was there.
Yeah, that was still early in Kyle's career. But it'll be interesting to see because Kyle is the big dog there right now and has been since since Carl Edwards left. Edwards was probably the last one to really give him a shot at taking the championship away with in-house.
Yeah, I mean, and Denny Hamlin is another guy that's, didn't win for the first time in his career last year. He'd won a race every year until last year. So you got to try and figure out where he's going to go. He might be at the tail end of his. He might be seeing the door hit him on the butt on the way out if he doesn't put some wins together this year.
Yeah, and he's got Christopher Bell breathing down his neck. I know FedEx would probably love to have him in that car. Oh, yeah. And yeah, Denny better win, and actually, he's my pick to win next Sunday.
Oh. All he's got to do
is for next turn.
Behave on pit road.
That he has not been able to do for several years.
He loses more races on pit road than anybody.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the next driver that is going to be into a new seat, the 36 at Front Row Motorsports, is going to be Matt Tifft for his Rookie of the Year effort. He'll be taking over in the 36 car in 2019.
Well, no, the 32 car's got a new driver.
With
Matt DiBenedetto's going to the 95, so who stepped into the 32?
Corey LaJoie's taking over for the 32. I thought Michael McDowell moved to a new team.
No, he's still with 34.
Okay, I must be getting
confused with... He got new crew chief, Blickensderfer.
Okay, that must be what I'm getting confused with here. And then we come to Daniel Suarez, the final piece of the puzzle that was snapped into place in 2018. The long-awaited, we all assumed for a long time that Martin Truex Jr. was headed to the 19 car, and then it was confirmed, but there was no announcement of where Daniel Suarez was going. In fact, Daniel really didn't say much of anything at all.
But there was an announcement that his sponsor had signed contracts with SHR, with Stuart Haas, so everybody pretty much figured, but they just wouldn't tell us.
Well, and the other thing that had to happen first was that we had to figure out what was going on with Kurt Busch, because he was the second to last piece to fall into place. Once he finally made his announcement, a long time went by, and we had several conversations over weeks about that of what are they waiting for? Why is it taking so long for them to announce Daniel Suarez as the driver of the number 41 on Haas?
It's got to do with money, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Eris will be the sponsor for 8 races. Haas Automation and State Water Heaters will fill in the rest. Daniel Suarez going to take over with Billy Scott as his crew chief in 2019.
Well, Eris backed their commitment way down from what they had with Gibbs because they were on a lot more than 8 races with Gibbs.
Ryan Preece is going to be another one of these Rookie of the Year battlers. He'll be in the 47 of JTG Doherty Racing. He's going to be taking over for A.J. Allmendinger, whose contract was not renewed at the end of 2018.
Yeah, again, you're talking about somebody with Preece and not much experience. You know, none. I don't think he ran a Cup race yet. But
no.
And, you know, he put all his eggs in a basket and took, 4 or 5 races with Gibbs, I think is what he had. And he won a couple of them.
In the Xfinity Series. See, he made the best of his option. They were talking about it was a really interesting move for him because he had so much sponsorship dollars, and he could have ran at a mid-pack Xfinity Series team for an entire season. He decided to take all of his money and go race 4 or 5 races at Joe Gibbs Racing, and he capitalized. I think he won 2 or 3 of them.
I know he won at Iowa the one time, you know, and he can obviously wheel. So, and he's won a ton of modified races.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll see what he does with the big car.
And that team's got a new alliance this year, and they're going to be getting all their cars and engines from Hendrick, so that's going to help them out a little bit.
Yeah. The next big one, obviously not a driver change, but the big story that came out of 2018 was that Hendrick Motorsports had decided to break up the guys that had won 7 championships, being Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus. Now, Jimmy's going to remain driver of the 48. Kevin Mendering is going to be heading over to the 48 team. He's coming up from the Xfinity Series where he's been training drivers for quite a few years, and he's going to be taking over the crew chief duties. The big question, and we're obviously going to talk about this as the season goes on, do either of you see this being a successful move for Hendrick Motorsports?
Well, I know Chad did a very good job of handling Jimmy during the race. You know, if the car got way off and Jimmy was getting, you know, he gets a lap down or whatever, Chad was the calm voice in his ear saying, don't worry about it. You get back in here, we'll get it fixed. We got 300 laps to go yet. Is the new guy going to be able to do that?
I think so. I think Jimmy just needs a new person in his ear. I mean, I think it's going to benefit William Byron more than it will benefit Jimmy Johnson. And the reason why is because Chad Knaus is a really good teacher, and William Byron is like a sponge. He loves to learn stuff, and I think that's really going to work out well.
I'm glad you brought that up. And that's where Chad Knaus went to. I should bring that up, too, that he's heading over to the 24 of William Byron.
And I wonder if there's going to be a new spotter for Jimmy Johnson, because I'm under the belief that spotters are just huge.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Well, then how do you think Brad Keselowski's going to do with the new spotter? He had Joey Meyer, I think, last year.
Sounds right.
For a long time. And now he's got a new spotter. So
yeah, but
that guy in your ear knowing when to talk, how much to talk, and what to say is critical for a driver.
Well, and also what they can decipher of what the other drivers are doing from up in the spotter stand. Dude, you need to go a car length deeper. You need to go a car or two higher going into the turn. Hit your approach a little different.
Moving on, Mike Wallace is actually rumored to be in 2 different cars. First, the 51 of Rick Ware Racing, and they're either going to be a Chevy or a Ford. We haven't figured that one out yet. Or he's going to be driving the number 52 for Rick Ware Racing. Cody Ware could be driving one of the other cars. Harrison Rhodes and Cole Custer have been rumored to be in those cars also. So that's going to be kind of a rotating seat for those 2 cars.
BJ McLeod, I know, is in the 51 at Daytona, because it's a big article about his first Daytona 500 start. Okay. So I do know that. So I don't know who's in the other Rick Ware car, but Rick Ware did, I believe they bought another, what's them deals where you get in all the races? Charter. Yeah, there you go. I couldn't think of the word there, but yeah, Rick Ware bought that second charter. So
real quick, it's going to be cool at Daytona to see the car in the number 2 pit garage stall be Jamie McMurray.
Yeah.
Because he's got the charter from Martin Truex from last year, so he gets to park right next to Joey Logano at Daytona.
Let's see. The 72 at TriStar Motorsports hasn't announced a driver as of yet. And the 77 Spire Motorsports, which was one of the last teams to come on board, purchased a charter, what you were just talking about. Jamie McMurray going to be driving the number 77 at Daytona. And then after that, they haven't announced if he'll drive any more races after Daytona. Quinn Huff is going to take over, but he is restricted at the super speedways and probably most of the mile and a half until he gets some of the shorter tracks under his belt and NASCAR releases him to go to the faster tracks.
Correct, yeah. He doesn't have a bunch of NASCAR experience, but does have some ARCA experience.
Matt DiBenedetto moving to Levine Family Racing, who is going to be taking over as the technical alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing that the 78 team gave up when they closed the doors. So Levine Family Racing set to make big leaps, and Mike Wheeler, former crew chief for Denny Hamlin, is going to be Matt DiBenedetto's crew chief, again in the 95 at Levine Family Racing.
Yeah, so a bunch of experience there. And I don't know if anybody's keeping an eye on Facebook or follows Casey Kane, but he's been putting a lot of laps on his sprint car, getting things dialed in for the sprint car season.
The 97, the Obiaka Racing Toyota is going to have Tanner Berryhill in his Rookie of the Year effort. So we'll see the 97 of Obiaka Racing hitting the track at Daytona too. So those should be...
But it's a full-time effort. They made a few races last year. I think Tanner drove the car at Homestead. I know David Starr tried to qualify that car at Texas but didn't make the field. And I've reached out in several things. I've talked to Tanner Berryhill's dad, Aaron, but have not been able to put anything together with Tanner yet. But Tanner did run the Chili Bowl. And
you're absolutely right. Obiaka plans to race a full season with Tanner Berryhill driving the car.
Terry Bannerhill?
Maybe we should take a break. I'll let Chad do most of the talking in the next turn. That's going to do it for us. That kind of gets you up to date with some of the driver and crew chief changes for 2019.
There will be a test in Turn 4.
And at the Daytona 500 party. So make sure you got your chart ready to go. We're going to take a break. We'll be back. Mr. Fantasy is going to join us just around the corner.
Finding a home can be the most important decision in your life. It's the simple factors of neighborhood, garage size, the school district, and commute that get overlooked by most realtors. Those are the aspects that Jim Blazina has been focusing on since 1988. From rental properties to your forever home, the Racing Realtor will work hard to get you exactly what you're looking for, and he can help list your home for a speedy sale. Contact Jim Blazina today, 402-980-8400, or jblazina at npdodge.com.
We all have that coworker that runs their mouth off at how great they are. They shot a 5 under par, 95-mile-an-hour fastball, bench press 375, brah. Wouldn't you love to shut them up by schooling them at Joe's Karting? Council Bluffs' premier indoor karting track, professionally designed so each corner is your opportunity to embarrass your coworker. Call Buddy for your next company outing at 712-256-5278. Joe's Karting, white knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue next to AMC 17.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole of the front stretch and the home of MAV TV, featuring action from the Lucas Oil Late Model Series.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Located on Mid-America Drive in Council Bluffs.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into Turn 3 on the front stretch.
Welcome back to it. Rolling into turn number 3 on the front stretch. Dirk Hughes and Dan Taylor taking you through today's final weekend before NASCAR competition hits the track full force for a points-paying race. Next weekend we'll have the Daytona 500, and then it's full bore from there. I went ahead and printed off all of my sheets for the rest of the season, and I spent most of the week getting ready for the 2019 season, and probably still not ready. But to get us there, and to hopefully improve my finishing position in our fantasy league, Mr. Fantasy himself, Chad Robb's going to join us now. FantasyRacingTips.com. Make sure you go over to FantasyRacingTips.com right now for all the information that Chad's about to talk about. And it's a pay service site. You obviously are going to get more information when you subscribe to it. But you talked to us last year. I think one of the times you came on, most people that had if they had followed what you said, had their money paid back within a very short time frame.
Usually by Daytona 500. I mean, because I have a strategy for daily fantasy sports on DraftKings and FanDuel that I use in the restrictor plate races, that it has really paid off well the last probably 3 years.
So I've had a theory for a long time of don't pick one of the bigger drivers at Daytona for our fantasy contest. Am I crazy? Is that wrong? Do you want to go with a Jimmy Johnson or a Brad Keselowski or a Kevin Harvick if they've got the stats to back it up?
It seems like lately the winner has been a mid-tier driver, not a driver like David Reagan or somebody that far back, but those Kurt Busches, Austin Dillons, that driver that's in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
Because the top drivers always race up front and they always wreck each other, before the end of the race. And the back markers don't have enough speed to get to the front. So it seems like that middle class, those guys, I really like I'm sticking with the Fords. They've won 7 out of the last 10 restrictor plate races. So I like Eric Almirola, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Ryan Newman, Paul Menard, those type of drivers.
You think Newman will take to a duck to water like that with switching over to a new manufacturer and a new team? He'll be able to pick up a win at the 500?
I think when you give him a car as fast as what them Mustangs are, I think he's really going to fall in love with that car.
And he's a little difficult to pass.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, with his teammate in front of him wrecking everybody, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., all he's got to do is just follow him to the front.
Just far enough back to where he's not one getting wrecked.
Yeah.
The fantasy leagues are a dime a dozen. I mean, there's different formats out there. We have our own Pick'ems contest, which is presented by Rick Havenridge of Wealth Partners. And then there's all these different types of fantasy leagues. Are the DraftKings and the what was the other one you were talking about?
FanDuel.
The FanDuel, thank you. Are those formats pretty much staying the same, or have they made changes in the offseason?
No, they're staying the same. NASCAR.com came out with their game, their Fantasy Live. It's staying the same pretty much.
They still having the driver out of the garage?
Yes.
So and this is, again, where, we don't get to have a lot of experts on the show just because they think, well, what do I want to come on a show in the Midwest for? But Chad is definitely one of these experts. I mean, you've got credentials all the way back into the mid-'90s, and you actually talked with NASCAR about this idea of doing the garage thing, and you said don't do that.
We had a conference call about it, and they had about 5 fantasy experts, and I was one of them that was included. And they brought the idea about the garage driver, and their whole idea was they wanted to get people to watch the race.
Yeah.
Because too many people were setting their fantasy lineup and then coming back Monday, how'd I do? And so in order to get people to watch the race, they had to have some kind of incentive. So you take that garage driver out, switch him into your lineup anytime before the end or the start of the final stage, and then you can really earn some extra points.
Yeah, because your guy can get taken out pretty early. Your driver can get taken out pretty early, and you're in a tough spot.
Yeah, whether he blows up or just whatever kind of thing happens, gets a hot dog wrapper on the grill and burns it up.
If the driver you took happens to finish, let's say they just win stage 1, and then they wreck in stage 2, and so you switch them out, do you get those 10 points that they won, or do you switch them out with the driver that finished second? And
you only get the points for the 5 drivers that are in your final lineup at the end of the race. But the game I like the best is the driver group game.
Yeah.
It's on drivergroupgame.com. And it's the same format as the old Yahoo game. It's really easy. All the drivers are put into a group. You got Group A, which is your elite drivers. Group B is your mid-pack. And Group C is, I don't want to say crappy drivers, but,
your economic drivers.
Field fillers.
Less funded.
Field fillers.
Yeah.
Well, that's even worse.
And so you just it's easy. You just pick a driver from each group every week, and that's what you roll with.
So you only get 3 drivers?
No, you pick 1 from Group A, 2 from Group B, and then 1 from Group C.
So you end up with 4 drivers. I was in a fantasy league 15, wasn't even quite 15 years ago, but Gillette used to do a thing called the Young Guns.
Yeah.
And it was Carl Edwards, Clint Boyer, Kurt Busch.
Casey Kane
was in there, Ryan Newman. and I don't remember who the sixth one was, but you had to pick 2 of those every week, and you couldn't pick the same guy 2 weeks in a row. Then they had an elite group of drivers, Tony Stewart, at that time Bobby Labonte, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon. You picked 2 of those, and then you basically had everybody else, and you picked 2 of those, and then you got your points that way.
The driver group game's kind of similar with that. You can only use the driver 10 times throughout the year, so you got to kind of plan out when you want to use each driver. You can't just load up on Harvick and say, I'm just going to use him every week.
We're going to start going down some of the articles that you'd posted on your page as of Thursday when we recorded. FantasyRacingTips.com is the place you can go to get more information on this. One of them you talked about was ranking the manufacturers. I bet I can guess who's number 1.
You think it's Ford?
I think it's Ford.
It's Ford, Chevy, or Toyota.
I went with Toyota, and the reason why is because they have so much money, and they don't have a lot of cars, to divide that money between. They're going to focus all their efforts on Joe Gibbs Racing, and when you have all of Toyota focusing that much efforts on 4 cars with 4 really good drivers, and you got Ford that's coming into a new car now. I know Brad Keselowski and Clint Boyer and those guys all said that it really tested well at Las Vegas, but still, it's a new car.
Yeah.
We don't know what we got yet.
Yeah.
So I think Toyota's going to come out strong, and then I think Ford's going to catch up with them. Usually it's around the All-Star race when they start coming together. Mm-hmm. And I think Chevy's going to really improve this year.
They better.
Well, Chevy was really throwing a curveball last year because they had this new Camaro ZL1 car all made up and everything, and then NASCAR says we're going to change the inspection rules and everything. We're going to go to this OSS system, and that just threw a big curveball to Chevy and set them back. And you look at what they did in the playoffs, Chase Elliott won at Dover. He won at Kansas. Those teams start picking it up at the end. Only 2 of them did. Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott. But I think Kurt Busch is really going to add some value to Chip Ganassi. The word out of the garage at Las Vegas was that his inputs at Chip Ganassi really showed them where they were missing some stuff, and really helped improve his car in the test session in Las Vegas. So I think you're going to have the manufacturers are going to be a lot closer this year than what they were last year.
FantasyRacingTips.com. One of the next articles you had posted on there, changes that are going to affect Fantasy NASCAR 2019. Obviously, you won't give them all up because we want people to go to the website, but can you talk about maybe a couple of the points that are going to be changing?
Well, the biggest thing is the aerodynamic rule of the car, slowing the cars down, making the downforce more on the cars. I mean, at the test at Las Vegas, the Xfinity cars were running faster laps than the Cup cars. So that's going to really change up fantasy. A lot of these games, you have to pick the winner of a pole.
Yeah.
And in this group qualifying, you might have a car that's in the back of a pack that's going to catch a draft, that's going to win the pole just because of his location during the qualifying session. So that's going to really make picking the winner of the pole a lot more difficult. And then I think the new rules package is going to bring in more drivers that can win races, like an Austin Dillon. He really had a lot of success in the Truck Series, Xfinity Series. Now he's paired up with Chris Gale, his crew chief from that series. So they kind of know this kind of aero package and everything. I think you're going to see more cars with an opportunity to win. That's really going to shake up fantasy.
Again, can't say it enough. FantasyRacingTips.com. You can also follow him on Facebook. Fantasy NASCAR Tips from Chad. You post some great information every day, getting people up to date. Talk a little bit about the pricing structure for your website. If I want to join, what do I get out of it, and how long does it last?
We have a $4.99. That's your basic package. And with that, you get all my picks for the different free games out there. The NASCAR.com game, the driver group game. There's a slingshot auto racing game that's really popular. It's on fantasyracing.online.com. You get your one and done picks, your like the front stretch game. I provide picks for that. And also you get my Garage Talk notes, which is notes I get from listening to people on Twitter, contacting people that work in the garage. I get a lot of inside information, and I keep telling everybody that information is going to be more important than the lap times this year, because handling is going to be more important than, just posting a fast lap with this new Aero package. So you get all that for $4.99 a month. And then I got the $9.99 package, which is all of that plus the DraftKings, the FanDuel stuff for a month. And then I got a season package, which is just NASCAR with the FanDuel, DraftKings, and all the NASCAR stuff. And then I got a Season Plus, which includes my golf picks and my football picks, which surprisingly, I'm a NASCAR guy, but I'm in the Fantasy Hall of Fame because of my football career, and I'm pretty good at that too.
Did you have the Patriots winning the Super Bowl? I
had Joey Logano winning the Daytona 500. I don't really want to talk about the Patriots. I'm a Chiefs fan.
Oh, okay.
Winning the Daytona 500 or the
or Homestead.
Oh, so did I.
Homestead.
I had that.
Yeah.
And I missed, along with two other people, and I missed the tiebreaker by one.
FantasyRacingTips.com. Like you talked about, usually the cost of the membership. You're saying if I do the $75, I get that year's membership for Fantasy Racing Tips. If I take your information and I play FanDuels, I'll probably have my money back by Daytona, if not maybe a couple of races in.
Well, that's been the trend the last 2 years.
Okay.
My picks finished in the top 10 in most of the large tournament contests. So most of my fans, came back to me and said, wow, I just paid for my whole subscription for the whole year. But if you follow it throughout the year, you usually get a pretty good return on your money.
I think $75 to make sure I beat Dirk is plenty of money for me.
Yeah.
I might say, here, just take my debit card today.
But I'm already subscribed.
Dang it. I'll give you $76. You're going to run up a bidding war. These two fools.
Change your pick to Dirk. Here's an extra $1.
FantasyRacingTips.com. Make sure you follow Chad. Hang around for a little bit longer. Might as well finish the show up with you.
Sounds great.
Let's take a break. We'll come back. We got one more thing that we got to announce that came out on NASCAR over the last couple of days as far as news and notes, and we'll talk about that coming up in turn number 4.
Racers all over the country are discovering the benefits of powder coating their chassis. Powder coating offers a clean, even finish you will be proud to show off to fans and sponsors. Plus, it's a more durable surface. While looking beautiful, powder coating offers superior protection against corrosive chemicals typically spilled during routine maintenance. Bare frames start at $275 with estimates available if blasting or reworking is needed. Get your quote today by emailing Jordan F. at redoakfabrication.com or by calling 712-623-4911.
Hey, look at that. You're sitting on your couch playing Halo, Madden, or NASCAR while your friends are at Joe's Karting. Each lap is an adrenaline-filled, heart-pumping, white-knuckle experience that you can only get at the Metro's largest indoor karting track. Eco-friendly Honda engines rip you around the professionally designed road course at breakneck speeds. Can you reach the 14-second lap bracket? There's only one way to find out. Put the controller down and get to Joe's Karting, 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs next to Quaker Steak and Lube.
It's checkers or wreckers as we enter turn 4 on the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs.
Welcome back to the front stretch. Just about ready to wrap this baby up. Turn 4 brought to you by Quaker Steak and Lube, the official watering hole of the front stretch and the home of the Daytona 500. You'll find Dirk and I there. Coming up this Sunday, February 17th, we'll get there at about noon to 12:30, get everything set up, prizes to be given away. Unfortunately, we've as always, we extend an offer to Chad Robb, but the great state of Iowa does not allow gambling, and so if you happen to wander over there, your internet connection will not allow you to give out your tips and tricks. So you're not able to do your job.
They allow gambling. They just don't allow gambling
Sports
out of
betting.
state.
Correct.
Fantasy sports.
Out of state.
Yeah.
So you're not able to help. You have to sit at your house in the comfort of your home with your own hot wings and beer.
Oh, yeah. You can follow me on Twitter at Mr. Fancy NASCAR. I'll be sending out tweets and stuff, my thoughts on the race, everything. It's a pretty good follow.
You know, I wonder if we could get one of those side screens that are set up along the perimeter of the Brickyard. Set one of those up with just Chad's feed, his Twitter feed. That way people can sit there and see this information. Would you be okay if we did that?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
All right. And make sure to follow Chad. What's your Twitter handle again?
At Mr. Fancy NASCAR.
Okay. We don't have one of those yet. I can't understand Twitter. I've tried.
I'll teach you.
Okay.
You got to put one of them tic-tac-toe things in there in the front.
Yeah.
Hey, something I wanted to talk about before we wrapped up today's show. We've got two pieces of information. One of them, what do they call it? The challenge in the Xfinity series that they
Dash for Cash.
That has been a big success. So they have trickled it down to the Gander Outdoor Truck Series, calling it the Triple Truck Challenge, and it's going to happen at Texas on June 7th, Iowa Speedway June 15th, and Gateway on June 22nd.
So 3 completely different types of tracks.
$50,000 bonus is available for, let's see, all drivers earning series points are eligible for the drivers. The drivers who win one of the 3 races receive a $50,000 bonus. Winning 2 of the 3 races nets a $150,000 bonus. And winning all 3 races is a cool $500,000 bonus.
Biggest difference between this and the Dash for Cash is the Dash for Cash driver can be the 3rd place.
Right.
But they got the 4 qualified drivers. The highest finishing driver gets that $100,000. In this, it's win only.
Mm-hmm.
You know, definitely somebody's going to win, and they might not win. Because if you got a Cup driver at Texas, Kyle Busch goes out and wins Texas, nobody can win the $500,000. Nobody's winning that $50,000. You know, there won't be any Cup drivers at Iowa Speedway.
Right.
And I don't know if there'll be any at Gateway, but there very well could be at Texas.
I wonder if those will be one of the races that NASCAR will kind of not really say you can't go to, but just say, hey, could you let these guys shoot it out for the extra money?
Yeah,
I think they did that in the Xfinity series. The Dash for Cash races, they didn't have Cup drivers.
Well, that may be.
Yeah, but still, in the Dash for Cash, there's 4 qualified drivers at each one, and they don't have to win.
They don't have to win the race. It's the top 4 finishing drivers consistently. Well, in those races.
Well, the Dash for Cash, the top out of those 4.
Yeah.
And then they have another race, and 4 guys qualify, and then they run the next race, and the top out of that finish gets $100,000. But this race, the guys got to win. That's the biggest difference. If they just, the Triple Truck Challenge, and you could win 3rd place and still get the money, that'd be a whole other story.
We are going to get David Hyatt, track president for Iowa Speedway, on the show hopefully in the next couple of weeks to get set for the 2019 schedule. What races are coming, what dates and weekends, and then we'll talk more about this Triple Truck Challenge that's going to be coming to Texas, Iowa, and Gateway for 2019. The other one I wanted to talk about, NASCAR made the announcement that they are working on the Gen 7 car. Currently, we're working on the Gen 6. We're running the Gen 6 car. And NASCAR expects that it will make its debut for the 2021 season and will be designed to feature new technologies and elements that showcase future production vehicles. They also, Steve O'Donnell also went on to say that there has obviously been more of a push to make these more manufacturer specific. You've talked about it. We've talked about it several times, Dirk. Really, the only thing that is manufacturer specific on the Gen 6 car is the nose piece. Everything from the front the wheel wells on back is NASCAR mandated.
Same car.
Pretty much the exact same car. It sounds like they're looking at changing that up a little bit to where it'll be more manufacturer specific. So when the Chevy model or the Toyota Camry goes out there, it looks more like a Camry that passes you on the interstate.
Well, and I mean, you're talking about this new technology, so I can see it now. The driver's going to come onto pit road and just flip a switch, and it's going to have the engine RPM right at the same thing, so he doesn't have to worry about the gas pedal. And then it's going to just pull it right in. It's going to pull it right in to the pit stall.
You're going to have lane assist.
Yeah.
and all that stuff.
Yeah, if you start changing lanes at Daytona, it's going to have a little beeper thing and pull you back in your lane.
Not clear. Not clear.
I heard that the reason why they plan to go to this new Gen 7 car is to try to bring other manufacturers into the sport. So.
Steve O'Donnell does say that. He said that this will be a great opportunity for those manufacturers who have expressed interest in joining the sport. We'll have a good place marker to say, okay, now we can start working efforts towards 2021 being our debut.
But are these new manufacturers looking as Toyota did and coming through the ranks? First they went in the Truck Series, then they came Xfinity, and then they came to Cup. Or are these new manufacturers just jumping right into the Cup Series? I mean, when I was doing it, I was in when Toyota came in. I was still working, and all we kept hearing was Nissan's coming, and Nissan came out with what they call their pickup, the Titan.
Yeah.
They didn't have that. Toyota came in with their Tundra, and boom, Nissan built the Titan, and everybody says, here comes Nissan into the Truck Series. Never happened, And the big scuttlebutt over the last several years has been Audi.
Yep, I've heard Audi and Honda are the two that I keep hearing are the ones that are wanting to get into the sport.
But I don't think Audi doesn't have a pickup that I know of. I know they've got SUVs and a lot of cool cars, but Honda does have their pickup. What's Honda call their pickup?
Is it the Passport?
Sounds right. Or is that an SUV?
I don't know.
Honda Ridgeline.
Ridgeline.
Okay.
Well, that's the pickup.
Well, we're getting to an area with the American manufacturers that they're only building trucks. They've only have a few cars on the production line. So NASCAR may loosen that rule a little bit where a new manufacturer comes in, they don't have to go through the Truck Series. Maybe they have to go start with the Xfinity.
They don't have to.
Yeah.
They don't have to. It's not a rule. It's just Toyota said, let's test the waters where it's a lot less money.
Yeah.
In the Truck Series, you're on, a third less races, et cetera, but everything was completely new for them. They designed the engine and all that stuff, from scratch. So I think, if a new manufacturer does come in, I think that'd be great. I mean, I think it's good that you got several new teams this year. Which is, almost unheard of lately. You know, so I'll be surprised if they don't have a full field every race this year.
It'll be pretty darn close. I think we'll be averaging 38, 39 cars.
That's what we've been
got,
averaging.
36 Chargers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think for some of these teams, it's worth it for like what we talked about with Starcom Racing, where they would run a second car when it was financially smart for them to do it because there wasn't a full field. They could go out there and run a full race, and the points, the purse payoff was worth it for them because they'd already expended everything on the first car. So it was worth for them to go and run another car.
And with having to run the engines a couple races and stuff like that, that's what Derek Cope was very specific about, and he specifically mentioned, this engine's already mileaged out, so it doesn't cost us anything to run this engine in another car this race. So,
and lots to come. Daytona 500 just around the corner. The Daytona 500 party at Quicker Steak and Lube. And make sure you follow Chad on Twitter. What was it? I'm sorry, I got to get that written down.
At Mr. Fancy NASCAR.
Okay, that's the symbol, the at. Okay.
Yes.
Right behind the tic-tac-toe thing.
Little Twitter joke. It's not a hashtag.
No, hashtag Fancy NASCAR.
We'll talk sometime. You'll learn me good about this Twitter thing.
Learn me good.
It's like Egyptian when I look at it. It's all crossed over.
You'll make Dan more better at it.
Maybe I should master English before I start worrying about Twitter. That's going to do it for us today. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, the Front Stretch Radio Show. We're going to be back next weekend, get you set for the Daytona 500 party. We're going to try to get a couple of interviews with drivers at the Daytona 500 or a couple of local drivers, so we'll work on getting those. Chad, fantasyracingtips.com is the website. Fantasy Racing Tips from Chad is your Facebook page.
Yes.
Thanks a lot for joining us. Appreciate you helping out with the show. We're going to do it. That's going to do it for us today. For Dirk Houston, I'm Dan Taylor. This is
Every race car driver has run into the same problem. It's well past normal parts store closing hours, but you need that one to finish your car. The guys who brought you white knuckle racing by the river bring you Joe's Karting Racing Parts and Tire Store. Open until 10 p.m. Monday to Thursday and open until 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. A parts store that fits your after-hours schedule, and you can turn a few laps at Joe's Karting while you're waiting for your part to get pulled from their warehouse. joeskarting.com for more information.
The official watering hole of the Front Stretch has you covered any day of the week with the best wings, great burgers, and amazing steaks. Each weekday from 4 to 6 is Happy Hour, featuring $1 off draft and well drinks plus $4 Luberitas. Mondays are Kids Night. Tuesdays are all-you-can-eat wings for $12.95. And the lube even delivers to the Council Bluffs area. Like Quaker Steak and Lube Council Bluffs on Facebook for a full list of weekly events.
Get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Mid-America Drive, Council Bluffs.
This has been the Front Stretch Radio Show, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. To contact Dan or Dirk, find them on Facebook at The Front Stretch or email them at frontstretch590@gmail.com. If you missed any part of today's show or want to hear a previous show, subscribe to the Joe's Karting YouTube page, where you can find almost every Front Stretch show.